on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Yeah, it's been emotional.
It's been a journey, Mark.
No, it hasn't.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Self-Publishing Show, episode 200. This is James Blatch.
And this is Mark Dawson. Considerably older, less hair than 200 episodes ago.
Yeah.
4 years older, in fact.
More hair on your face.
Yeah, it's moved. It's lost its way and migrated south.
Look, I'm joining you. This is just lazy stubble, though. It's half term. And you are wearing your hat today. Is that bad hair day?
It's very bad hair day. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought I will do my best Shane Ritchie impression.
Yeah, very good. There's a good Shane Ritchie film coming out, isn't there?
No.
Anyway, no, there's not.
There's no good Shane Ritchie.
Guy Ritchie. I was thinking Guy Ritchie. He also wears a cloth cap like that. Anyway, we're gonna incur the wrath of our YouTube man about the banter. This is episode 200. We've got 200 episodes, Mark. Is this? Let me ask you before we get into what we're going to talk about. I will give you this. You are the guy who came up with the idea for the podcast in the early days. Has this podcast worked out in the way that you hoped?
Well, I've been trying to get rid of you for about 119 episodes, and that hasn't happened yet. So,
bad luck.
Yes, it has. Yes, I've listened to podcasts for ages and still do, and there are lots in the authorly space, and I thought, given that we'd actually done a little bit of this before when we were in the previous job, I thought it would be something that we could put our hands to. And I think we had all the archive is still available, of course, and some of those early ones were a little bit confused. We had me and you interviewing people at the same time, which was a bit clumsy. So that didn't work. And we've kind of worked out the format that works for us, and we've become a bit more professional. We've introduced the YouTube channel. We've got very swish new intro and outro, and we've got a celebrity voiceover guy. We've even got people. We've seen pictures in the group of people who now watch the podcast on their big TVs, which is as actually we intended it to be. It would be a format that looked good on TV, and also, obviously most people still listen to it on their, if it's Mark Lefebvre on his drive into the office when he was at Kobo, or people walking their dogs or doing the dishes or whatever it is that they do whilst they listen. We're grateful for every single one of them. Yes,
yeah, it is. It does make a big difference. And one of the great things that happens to us when we go around the world, and this happened to me in the lift at Vegas last year, might have happened last week, we just will have got back by the time this goes out, is that you're just having a conversation and people come up to you and say, I know your voice. And they've listened to every episode. And it is, it's like radio. I've said this before, it's a very intimate form of talking. People sort of feel they get to know you because we talk very, very naturally. There's nothing put on about either of us in this, so people do kind of know us. So yes, I really like that. Very much part of it's one of the pieces of the community that is the indie world on the planet today, and we're proud of that. I'm not saying it's the dominant part of it. It's just a small chink, but it's nonetheless part of the landscape. And we've had some great interviews. We've got some great ones coming up, actually. In fact, last night I had my first five-way, which was really good. I did use that gag, of course, with 4 female romance authors, 4 brilliant, successful, funny, witty female romance writers.
And you.
And me. And you know what? It was really good. And we were all a little bit worried about having, all the multi-screen and everyone talking over each other. It wasn't like that at all. And everyone spoke enthusiastically about what they've done. They've collaborated over a series together, a female billionaire. So it's the billionaire romance genre, but they've put the female as the billionaire. Which has its own challenges, but they wanted to do that. It's kind of female empowerment thing, and it was brilliant. So that one is coming up soon. And one of the contributors to that is Lucy Score, who's been hugely successful, done really well. And we're going to have her interview this month, actually, in November. No, actually, maybe beginning of December. I'll have to look that one up. her and Tim too. They're a sort of power couple in that area as well. So we've got we'll put those back to back, those 2 interviews.
Did they take a course or anything like that?
Yes, Lucy and Tim did actually take a course. They took the 101, then Ads for Authors course.
Great.
Ads for Authors will be opened up at some point. I haven't got the date in front of me, but it's
quite
late,
soon.
late November, yeah.
Late November, late November.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And yes, and we've got, young Tom has done some work in laying out. Yes, I know, he's done some actual work. So these are, do you want to hear the top 10 podcast episodes from 10 to 1?
Do they all feature me?
They all feature, of course they do. They all feature me.
Yes.
Actually, no, there is a couple of episodes that don't feature you. I don't know if they made the top 10, we'll see. So this is the most downloaded episode. Bearing in mind, we get about 10,000 downloads per week per episode, but over time they gather more downloads on YouTube and the various platforms. This has been put together over time.
Well, we don't need to say the download totals, because that will if in the future we decide we're going to sell advertising space, all of our negotiating position will be
yes.
What we can say is I think we've had about 1.4 million downloads of the show. That doesn't include YouTube, so 1.4 million is pretty good. I can't think of too many more self-publishing podcasts who have that kind of. I can think of one. Joanna has a few more than that, but she has been going for about twice as long. So we're doing pretty well.
We are doing well. So number 10 is episode 119, First Steps in Self-Publishing with 2008 SPF Foundation winners. Mm-hmm. So we should mention the foundation. So the SPF Foundation is a sort of charitable thing that we do where we put some money in conjunction with Reedsy, and we may have a new partner this year as well, together, and we look for authors who basically don't have the resources to realize their talent. So we give them our courses, we give them some money to spend at Reedsy. I think maybe $3,000.
$2,000.
$2,000 they get to spend on
for four people. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting for me, Mark, is that suggests, people looking at our podcasts are very often starting out and they want to get that inspiration, that their thirst for knowledge of how to get going. So that's a good one for us to think about for future episodes. Maybe another little series of maybe 3 in a row of the things you should be doing to get your platform up and ready. One maybe on craft, one maybe on marketing. So we can think out loud as we're going through this. That's number 10. So number 9 is episode 123, close by to that one, which was a bonus episode, Self-Publishing Marketing Q&A. Do you remember that one?
No, but I think that would have been possibly around a launch of the ads course. So maybe we will do something like that again. So me answering questions.
Yes.
Something like that.
Episode 8 was the episode associated with that, episode 121, how to boost your book marketing with Pinterest. That's interesting, isn't it? So Pinterest, I like Pinterest, and I think it's going to work okay for me because military jets, Pinterest is full of them, and I do genuinely spend time on there geeking and nerding over those. But it is, I think, a genre-specific platform. I think if you're not in a very visual genre, I don't think it'll work as well, but people are interested in Pinterest. Number 7 was episode 120. This is amazing. So 120, 121, 123. What was going on then?
That'll be an ads launch.
Yeah, it was an ads launch, wasn't it? So masterclass, Facebook changes and what they mean. So those masterclasses, they always go down very well. Definitely do another one of those, Mark, because Facebook has changed quite a lot. And we are going to scrabble to try and get the advanced Facebook course done in the rest of this year. So that would be an opportunity, I think, to revisit that. Number 6, episode 143, Bookstagrammers. Is that Instagram?
Yes, James. It's
right.
Bookstagram is how writers use Instagram, basically. Goodness me.
Right. Episode number 5 was episode 135, the Indie Author Toolkit. So that's something you put together. Mm-hmm. Another sort of masterclass, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, things that you need the tools you'll use often if you're starting out as an indie writer.
Number 4, getting to the upper echelons now. Episode 111, Full Nelson in the UK. Book Lab with David F. Berens. That was our very first Book Lab episode, and we are due to have another Book Lab episode.
We are.
Okay, number 3, into the top 3 now. Episode 134, A Successful Author Mindset.
Yes, so talking about the the things you need to have at the front of your mind in terms of
yes,
your mindset as you go about starting what you hope will be a professional, successful career as an author.
I think you are absolutely right. So number 2, getting exciting, getting to number 1. Number 2 was the most exciting episode I think we've ever done. GDPR, what all authors need to know. That was an interesting episode, that. And do you know what?
Most expensive.
It was the most expensive. We had to pay for legal advice for that one. It's cost us a few $1,000s. And I've had an exchange on Facebook this morning about these questions, this GDPR questions, about people understanding it. So obviously it's a technical thing, doesn't go away, and it's something that people need to learn about. And actually, I tell you what, that's completely relevant, that episode. A lot of the stuff like the Facebook episode we did, you probably want us to update that now. We'll do another one of those. But GDPR, not much has changed. And the fact that you and I had a discussion about different approaches and where your risk management was in that, just, I think, empowered people to make good decisions on where they sit with GDPR. And if you don't know what GDPR is, it's the rules and regulations, EU-based, that affect anyone who sends an email to anybody in the EU. So anybody in the world actually needs to be aware of those regulations. And number 1, dun, 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 the old chart music in the UK. Number 1, episode 110, How I Quit the 9 to 5 to Write and Never Looked Back.
That's Ernie Dempsey.
Episode 10, Ernie Dempsey. Ernie Dempsey was a very early course taker of ours, actually. And he just wrote spontaneously, I think he wrote an email to you and said, man, you changed my life. He was a school teacher, and like so many of us, wanted to be a writer, but that dream had come, ebbed and flowed, and probably disappeared on the back burner. But he carried on for a bit, and people like Shane Silvers and lots of other people, thanks to you, Mark, unlocked their potential, really, by showing them the way to find their readers.
Should have charged a percentage.
Yes, it would be, this time we'd be millionaires. Fantastic. So they are the top 10 episodes going back over the 200, well, or more or less. Mark's now got his calculator out trying to...
and according to Tom, those are the top 10 episodes. According to me, I don't think they are. But anyway, that's a small diversion. They're all lovely episodes that I recommend. They just may not be the ones that were downloaded the most.
Yeah, definitely.
So basically, the last 13 minutes was just us bantering. So Banter Man is going to have fun. He can kind of ignore this entire section and move on to the next one. Although if he's waiting for an interview, he's going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah, there's no interview in this episode. But what we are going to talk about, the substance of this interview, is the stuff that people need to be aware of to make sure they're basically not leaving money on the table. And one of the things that's happened to you recently, Mark, is a very interesting print deal.
Yes, so we could talk about that. I think it's quite interesting. And I did a podcast with Mark Lefebvre, his Stark Reflections podcast. So that was the first time I've really spoken about it in any detail, but I've posted about it in the SPF community, and I don't think people quite understand what this is, and how important it could be. And I'm not saying that because it's a deal that I've done. It's not that I'm the first person to do it either, but you don't see these deals very much. And I think, without being too grand about things, this could be what publishing looks like for some authors in the future. So the story starts about 3 years ago, I suppose, and my agent, so I have an agent, Annabelle, at PFD in London. He's very good, and weirdly doesn't have a huge amount to do with my stuff, because the publishing side of things, I do that myself. Obviously, I don't need anyone to help me with that. No agent or publisher required. She does help me with foreign deals, or she did do before I stopped really looking for those, because I'm doing that myself now as well. But so she sold some German rights, Czech rights, I think we had, some other bits and bobs floating around in there, Italy, and some other bits and pieces, and TV and film, stuff like that. I could teach myself the law and the legal side of that, but it would take me a while, and I don't have the contacts that they have. So the agency certainly does a very good job for me on that front. But about 3 years ago, Annabelle sent me an email and said, I was at a party in Morocco. Annabelle's jetting around the world all the time. And it was a birthday party, I think. And there was some fairly well-connected people there, including a guy called Mark Smith, who Annabelle knows quite well. He is actually neighbours with David Cameron. They actually their gardens back onto each other, so he's seen the Shepherd hut and all of that kind of nonsense.
The Oxford set.
Yeah, he lives in Chipping Norton, so down in that part of the world. So Jeremy Clarkson and all that lot.
And the guy from Blur.
Alex James, yeah,
they're all mates, aren't they?
They all hang around. So anyway, Mark at the time was before then he set up. I'm going to get some of this wrong, but I think he set up Quercus first of all, and then set up Zafra. So kind of a publishing company. So and not the kind of publishing companies that anyone could set up. He was a fully funded, big London offices, or London offices anyway, and some well-known titles published. So he was the publisher who introduced Stieg Larsson in translation to the rest of the world. So those well-known Millennium books were translated and obviously did exceptionally well in English. Subsequent to that, he published lots of other books, including Maestra was a big hit a couple of years ago, a very effective ads campaign accompanying that. And so, it was doing well. His company was subsequently bought by Bonnier, kind of merged with Bonnier, which is a big, a Swedish publisher owned by a very, very rich Swedish family. And while at Bonnier, they bought Wilbur Smith and a very big deal, Linda LaPlante. So some well-known authors were tempted away from their normal publishers to this upstart publisher. And Mark, at this party in Morocco, Annabelle said, "Look, I have an author I think you'd like," and she gave him or told him about the John Milton series. He then read The Cleaner. And according to Mark, he then read everything else that I've done. So all the Milton books, all the Beatrix books, all the Isabella books. He became effectively, a bit of a fan. So he then spoke to Annabelle, and Annabelle introduced him to me, and we started thinking about ways in which we could work together. So I think the initial idea was, would I like them to publish me? And as I said on the podcast before, nothing is off the table when it comes to how my books are published, but a deal where I would include license to digital rights would be very expensive, because I know how much those books have made me over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. So what I went back with was a suggestion that, I would be more interested in something that enabled me to sell more print. And print is a difficult thing, as you're about to discover when you press publish on your book. One of the formats you'll be able to take advantage of is print. And I sell a decent amount of print, maybe £2,000 a month, something like that, which is obviously that's great. It's quite a lot of money. But it's not very much in terms of when you compare it to the amount that I'm selling in digital. And it bears remembering, and it's something that we can forget as we're indie authors who concentrate on digital, is that 70% of the market reads in print. So 30% is digital, and that's growing, but 70% reads print. And as I mentioned on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I did a talk in front of 250 kids the other day, and when I asked them how many read on a device, maybe 5 or 10% put their hands up. So it's clear that print is still a huge market. It's still vibrant. Book sales go up according to the bookseller. So it's one I want to get into. And it's not easy to get into it on your own. So I looked into it with my brother, and we have a person in management at Waterstones in the UK is in the SPF community, and I think is a fan of my books. And my brother and him started thinking about, is there a way that we could do a print run of Milton books, maybe the first couple, get them into Waterstones in Scotland, which is the area this guy is responsible for, and then if we can sell a few of them, make a case that we could introduce them to the rest of the chain. And we looked into that, and there's lots of things that you need to learn. Print run, you've got to invest in it. The margins were wafer thin.
Right.
No money at all, really.
What are we talking about? Can you remember any of the figures?
No, not really. But it was less than £1 in terms of much less than £1. I think 50
This
pence.
is what, Barry Hutchinson told us about, that he did his calculations.
It's different for him in that he has a third party in the chain, being a publisher. We wouldn't have a publisher. We would also be the publisher, but because we're not doing it at a massive scale, it's difficult to get the price of the printing down so that you can charge enough to make a margin. So it was tough. So we looked into that. We would have done it, but Mark then came back to me whilst he was at Bonnier and said, let's investigate this and let's see if there's a way that we can work together. Mark came back to me and was keen to see if there's anything that we could, a way that we could work together on print. And we drew up, or they drew up a contract. I engaged lawyers. We were looking at a joint venture, so it wouldn't be, they would be my publisher, but it would be a very equitable split. And I can't go into too many details on what the contract looks like for, reasons of confidentiality, but it's very equitable. I put in the IP into the joint venture. So the IP in the Milton series, 14 books I think we included, and Bonnier, which was the company that Mark was at the time, would put in things like, they would pay for the printing, distribution, warehousing. They'd market them. There'd be advertising. So they'd put the money in. I put the IP in, and we would sell the books, and then we would split the proceeds. So I couldn't see a downside. The negotiations were reasonably straightforward. It was a very fair contract that I didn't really change, but so we were really close to signing it. And then I got an email from Annabelle saying, it's bad news, Mark's left Bonnier. So we were like, we were kind of this close. We went back to Bonnier and said, would you still be interested in this? And the person who'd replaced him it wasn't her deal. She didn't know anything about me. So not unreasonably, they passed. So we were like, damn, that was really close. And I was disappointed, because this was of all the projects I've been working on, so including film and TV, some of the funky audio stuff that I've got coming out, this was the one that I was most interested in, because there's a massive upside. It could be worth quite a lot. If the books sell, it's a really good opportunity. So I was gutted for a while. And then we kind of scroll forwards. I don't know, I'm not sure how long we put this to sleep. It was probably at least 6 months. And I was at the London Book Fair in March this year. And what the fair's like. It's pretty bonkers, and you're getting a lot of attention. I'd just done one of the Amazon panels. I'd been kind of answering questions for 2 hours. I frankly was getting a bit antisocial. So I decided, right, it's time to go for a little walk just to clear my head. So I wandered around the hall, and I was leaning against a pillar, and I just kind of checking my email. And this guy came up to me and said, "Hi, Mark." And honestly, I didn't recognize him. I was just in a weird kind of, I wasn't thinking. And it was Mark. And so we had a little chat, and he said, "Look, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, but I'm going to be back in the game soon, and let's pick up where we left off." So I was like, yeah, that's great. I'm completely up for that. But I think I'd kind of almost forgot about it. It was like, if anything happens, it happens. But I wasn't kind of buying any holiday properties based on the strength of that conversation. But then what then developed, Annabelle got back to me and said, look, Mark is back in the game. He and some colleagues and investors have just bought a publisher, and they bought one called Carlton Books. So reasonably well-known publisher, mostly doing non-fiction. Had an Andre Deutsch, which is a well-known fiction imprint, especially 50 or 60 years ago. Had a good name, and they'd bought this company, which they were going to continue to run, and at the same time they were going to scale it up quite fast and build a fiction list. And Mark was interested in developing that with me. So we pulled up the contract, changed the names. Effectively, everything else is almost the same. So the actual contracting parties from their side, it's not Bonnier, it's now Carlton. And we signed the contract. It was nothing more to do, really. It was pretty much ready to go. So we signed that. I've subsequently been up to London a couple of times and been talking about what this might look like practically. So I have an editor, a guy called John Elek. He's very nice. John has a colleague called Sarah, who again is lovely. We've been out to lunch. I've spoken to their marketing and PR team. We're looking at possibly doing new covers, possibly going for hardback. So next year could be 3 books published in print, including a hardback, because the tactics are we want to be Sunday Times bestseller, and you basically have to sell about 1,000 copies of a hardback to hit that.
Right.
I can probably do that just off my list. I can say that I'm going to sign 1,000 copies. If you want one, it's going to cost you 15 quid. We'll send them out. I'll go in and sign 1,000 copies, and then boom, that gives us Sunday Times bestseller. And then we can when you've got that, you can go to the trade, so Tesco's and the supermarkets and Smiths and that, and say, this is a Sunday Times best-selling book. We're going to be publishing 3 of these a year, and we want to get on into your shelves, and then we'll see. So I think what people don't understand is that it doesn't affect what I do. Right? So I'm just taking an asset, so a story, and it's just one, at the moment, small aspect of that asset, and optimizing how that asset is exploited. So my only risk here is that I will have to take down the KDP print versions of the books. That's the only risk.
What margin did you make on the KDP print on demand versus this?
Oh, I mean, more than I would for this, I think. It's about $2, $2.50, something like that per copy.
Okay.
And you can set your price whatever you want to increase the margin, but it's around about $2.50 if I still want to be within the range of what I think is acceptable pricing. So the margin will be less, and of course it's being split between two parties rather than just me. But what we're looking at here is volume. So
yes.
I don't sell that many copies in print. If this works, I could sell 500,000 copies in print, maybe 1 million copies in print. And so the actual potential revenue generated there is quite significant, even when it's split. So, and also, I mean, this is, it's great for promotion and marketing, my name.
Visibility,
Visibility is great.
It's physically visibility. People walk into shops and see your book, and it starts to get inside their brains a bit. And at some point, they're online and buy the Kindle version. From you.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've all already seen the bookseller led with the story. Then there was a 1-page spread the next week where Mark was talking about what he's done, and again, I was mentioned fairly prominently in that article. So it does. And plus I can kind of tie in the promotion with the promo that I do. The ads that I run will also sell print books. Everything is really, and as they have said, I know how to sell books digitally probably better than they do. What I don't know, even closely, in terms of what they can do is how to sell print. I don't have the contacts. I don't know how to do it. No idea. They do. They've done that's their business.
And that's worth paying for with that split, with that revenue.
Yeah,
split.
Absolutely. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'll be theoretically the same as the person. I was just looking at the most read top 10 for this week in the Kindle store. And the same author is at 10,976,542 in that list. And there's somebody who traditionally publishes their print versions.
And I wonder who that is.
And electronic, and self-publishes their ebook versions. And that's J.K. Rowling. A lot of people don't realise that if you look at the publisher of the ebook, you'll see it's something like Pottermore, I think is the name of her company.
It is,
which is her. And she will show them what a fantastic deal from her point of view, but all that visibility you get from the physical product, in her case, obviously a massive worldwide franchise, translates into sales for ebooks as well. So you are definitely going to feel a knock on there, I think.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, that's the plan. I can't see any downside to it. It's win-win for everyone. I mean, that they from their perspective, this isn't a massive gamble. The books have sold 2 million copies already just by my own efforts. They have thousands of reviews, generally quite good reviews. Not all, obviously, but a fairly good standard of reviews there. Readers like them. They often read through all of them. They recommend them to their friends. So it isn't taking a punt on an unknown author who doesn't have any experience, or and there's already a backlist there. There's 15 books in the series now, in the Milton series. So yeah, there's lots to exploit.
So this guy Mark, his business model here is going to be this. Is it going to be picking up successful indie authors and doing the print side of it, or is he going to be more of a traditional publisher looking for new authors as well?
He's very entrepreneurial, which is. Annabelle said to me when before she introduced me, she said, "You two will get on very well," because I think that way too. And he's very flexible. He's not hidebound into one way of thinking. So this I think was a reasonably easy sell, because he's prepared to take chances on new models. So they are acquiring books in the traditional manner. So at the moment, they have told agents that they're now looking to build their list and start publishing next year. So I know that John, my editor, is very busy acquiring content at the moment through the traditional methods. But at the same time, I know that they're interested in looking at indies. At the moment, indies with a track record like me. There's one indie in particular that I think that they're quite interested in. I'm not going to say who that is, but I've been speaking to them about whether this is something that they might like to do.
I can guess who that is.
You probably can, but we're not going to out them on the podcast. But yes, so they're definitely open-minded about that, which I think is exciting. I've never understood, and we should probably go back. This is not the first of these deals that's ever been done. I remember, must be 6 years ago now, Hugh Howey with the Wool series. He managed to sell the print rights only, kept the digital, and he sold the print rights, I think, to Hodder and Stoughton in the UK, and I imagine he did something similar in the US. I remember going into work at the BBC and seeing posters for Wool on the Underground and thinking, I'd quite like some of that. Now, and this is 6 years ago, and I don't know why more of those deals haven't been done. I have a feeling Bella Andre did one as well. But why there hasn't been, a flood of these deals being done, because I just don't see what the downside is for either party. I've tried. I've tried very, very hard to work out what am I risking by this deal, and then from the same perspective, what are they risking? The only kind of Mark has a theory about this, and I haven't actually interrogated him as to what it is yet. But the only thing I can think of is that it just changes their model too much, and it bolsters Amazon. And that they're not taking all of the rights; they're taking some of the rights, and potentially it does change how they do things. But I'm not doing those deals otherwise. So
yeah. Well, I suppose that the only thing to be wary of, and it's worth mentioning this in the 200th episode to give general advice, is that there will also be companies looking to take money off you to do this type of thing, which you should have nothing to do with. What you're doing here is putting in the IP, which is a hugely valuable part of this deal, then signing a deal. They're putting in money and effort in terms of printing, and that's a publishing deal. A company that wants several £1,000s off you to get the books printed and so on is one I'd be wary of, because they will be around. They are around.
Oh yeah, then there's nothing like this. That's absolutely, no author should pay. It doesn't work that way. You don't pay to have your book published. That's not what we're doing, and it's not. I can't recommend that to anyone. And we've seen lots of people actually taking, as we record this, the 101 course is still open, and I've had a number of emails from people saying, I went with a real vanity press, and I've paid them several $1,000s and had nothing back, and it annoys me no end to hear those stories, because we weren't able to get to them soon enough to meet, so that they didn't have to dip into their pension to publish something or spend their life savings. So this couldn't be any more different from that model, which isn't really a model at all. It's just kind of basically that's fraud, if you ask me. But anyway, that's
yeah, quite right. Oh well, so when does this all start?
Well, we think I'm in the process, because we're re-editing the books as we go. So there's 3 to be published. Yep, next year. So John has read the cleaner and made some light edit, because this has been, the book's been edited professionally twice, maybe more. It's been through, the beta team. So, in terms of is it a clean book? Yeah, we're not correcting typos here. We're kind of talking about some fairly. There's a few points he's made that I think are pretty good. So I'm doing a light run through of that, and then we'll move on to the next one. With the intention, I mean, the contract says we'll do 3 next year, but what we are more focused on is making sure that we do it right, because you only really get one chance to launch. So if, let's say, the marketing team say that we Tesco will take the book, but not in Q1, it might be Q3, so September, we would wait, right? We'd wait for September, make sure that everything is right, and then, if we can get it into Tesco's, and maybe it's, maybe we do hardback first, and we do a really cheap hardback, so £10 for the hardback, just so that we can say, it's a Sunday Times bestseller. Now that, to me, I'm not bothered by those kinds of things. I don't care. I don't really check the USA Today list. I know I've hit it a few times, but I don't really care. But it isn't about me, and it's not really about. It's still. I think that's still valuable for punters who are thinking about buying something, but it's more important for buyers.
Yeah, the only thing that's interested is the commercial aspect of that, right? From our point of view.
Yeah, so if you go to Tesco's and they've got 20 books that are being pitched at them for 5 slots in their autumn promotion, they may be swayed by the fact that this book has, you can say that in digital, the series has sold 2 million copies. We put it out in hardback immediately, a Sunday Times bestseller. That gives that book suddenly has more weight than if we just gone, he sold it himself, did quite well for a few years, and now, here's the first physical edition. So it's all about what it looks like and positioning and doing it correctly. So I'm very happy. I don't care if we don't publish anything next year. I'll keep chugging on, and when it's ready to go and we do it properly, that's when we do it.
Well, there'll be a lot of people watching very carefully, and I don't know who this other author is, so I'm just going to free will here. If you have a look at I often do every week, have a look at the Kindle charts and see. First of all, I like to see members of our own community doing well in the Kindle charts. People like Imogen Clark, who's done really well and is there now. I would think this is the sort of thing she should be interested in. Top number 1, as I look at it, is not uncommonly is LJ Ross, Louise Ross, who's an indie author and been on the podcast and is doing tremendously well as well. And I'd imagine that your guys scrutinize these lists very carefully, looking for that little criteria, that lots of ebooks being sold and a potential there for physical books. Now, the only other thing I'm going to say is, just from I know you're going to shoot me down on this as an environmental point of view, is there's something good about printing a book when it's required and not having 25,000 sitting in a warehouse. A lot of energy and time goes into printing. So I'm sure in the modern world, your guys going to make sure. I think they can print and distribute faster than they used to. So they don't. It's not like the old days where you did have to have that stock there, and it was a gamble as to whether you're going to sell them or not. And famously, some books get pulped afterwards.
Bouncing Back by Alan Partridge.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about the publishing business on that side of things as to what their workflow looks like. It may be. Hopefully, it's less environmentally unfriendly than it might have been before. But I don't think you can do POD at that kind of scale. There will be a print run. These will be hardbacks as well. So at least in the first instance, so hardback is a little harder. Well,
it is obviously by definition.
By definition,
we're gonna have Greta on our case. You be careful.
Yes, that's right. No, I completely buy that. I'd rather it was. I'll plant some trees. There you go. I'll plant some trees in the garden. No, I'm not. I don't mean to be flippant about that. That is it's a valid point, but I can't really turn a deal down on that basis.
Fair enough. Yeah. No. It's just something. Some changes are taking place at the moment to make it better than it was, and also, when you're talking about trees, you are talking about trees that are being planted at a huge rate in the UK to try and help with that. Okay. It's an area neither of us know much about. Good. Well, that's very exciting. So it might be a while before you're able to evaluate results.
Oh, yeah. I think it'll be a couple of years probably. But, we are we're making progress.
Good. Right. Anything else to say on our 200th episode? We're 40 minutes in.
No, I think that's pretty much it. So, yeah, it's been emotional.
It's been a journey, Mark.
No, it hasn't. We don't have journeys on this podcast.
We don't. Well, look, I'm hoping that next week's episode, so this is going out on the 15th of November, which is our last day in Las Vegas for 20 Books Vegas. So we'll hopefully next week have a live from Vegas. We'll have to dress up as Elvis. We'll have a live from Vegas episode on the 22nd of November. Auspicious day, 22nd November, is the day John Kennedy was shot. Margaret Thatcher resigned. I don't know why things happen on the 22nd of November.
Don't know. Interesting.
But it's going to be our live from Vegas episode. Hopefully next week, if everything technically has happened correctly at 20 Books. We're looking forward to that conference from where we're recording this now. And we're also looking forward to another 200 episodes. And we should say a very big thank you to the people who listen, to everybody listening, to whether you're running along, jogging, whether you're in your house, whether you're driving in your car, whether you're doing the washing up, whether you're sitting in front of your YouTube video. Hello, if you're doing that now. This would not be here if it wasn't for the fact that people consume it and form a part of the podcast.
And also, especially to those who help us to fund it by supporting us on Patreon. So they are even... I hold them even closer to my bosom. So yes, thanks.
They paid for this microphone arm, which I love.
They did. We really do appreciate that. If you're supporting us on Patreon, then it makes it a lot easier for us to do this decent quality. Yeah,
patreon.com/self-publishing show, and we'll welcome our new Patreon supporters next week. We'll have to remember to take them with us to Vegas. Maybe there'll be some in the room. Right, that's it. Excellent. Well, good episode, Mark. Thank you very much for being there for 197 of the last 200 episodes. You missed 3 in New York.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, very true.
And from where we're recording at the moment, I'm going to say have a nice vacation, as they say in America, because you're about to go off to Disney World.
Disney on Friday, yep. So looking forward to that.
Fantastic. You'll have a great time. Good. We're running out of time on our clocks here. So we're going to say it's a very goodbye from him.
And a bicentennial goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/self-publishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.